We're going to be in Psalm 131 today. Psalm 131. And the title of today's message is The Great Release of Preoccupation. I have a confession for you. I'm terrible at titles. So I asked Chad to help me, and this was his title. If you have been around the Second Mile, you know that titles are part of his shtick. He's really good at it. So he helped me. As we head into this psalm this morning, and as we head out of 2023 and into 2024, when David spoke for his Advent message, he asked us to practice reading Psalm 131 for the week and practice saying, I don't know. And Psalm 131 has been something that I've really leaned into in the past few years, probably starting in 2020 with the turnover that everything that happened in the world. And so when he said that, and I wanted to teach it for a long time, when he said that, I was like, oh, maybe now will be the time. And so I told Chad I'd be willing to do that today. And as I've been thinking and reflecting on 2023, there have been highs and lows. As I look around the room, I know that that's true for so many of you. High highs and low lows for all of us. And it's likely been tumultuous in many ways for most of us. That I don't think I know anyone who would say everything about 2023 was exactly how I wanted it to be. In fact, I would think everyone in here would say there were things that I wish hadn't happened in 2023. And there are things in this room that are all over the scale, everywhere, from finding physical healing in health to extreme illness in health, to conflict with people, to resolution and restoration with people. There have been people who have lost jobs and found new work. There have been dreams that have been fulfilled and dreams that have been cast aside. Everything. It is part of the human experience. And we all know, we're not naive, that 2024 will be much the same way. Things for us to really get stuck in. Things for us to be overcome with fear in. Things for us to allow to cycle and spin in our brains that are just pulling at us. That is the reality of the human experience. Psalm 127 calls it eating the bread of anxious toil. Like we're anxiously toiling in our lives, in our work, eating anxiety. Chomp, chomp, chomp. It's part of the human experience. But we know as Jesus people that he calls us to a higher way. We just spent a month looking at love and joy and peace and hope. And we know that the way of the cross, that Jesus took our burdens. It's not just a simple Jesus answer that we say, that he literally went to the cross with our burdens. And we can fix our eyes on him and remember in his word that he tells us that he has suffered in every way so that we can look to him in our distress. In his word, he tells us that Jesus himself cried out to the Father with loud cries and tears to the one who could save him from death. And he was heard. Jesus was heard by the Father because of his reverent submission. We can remember and trust. We just sang about remembering that he is maturing us, that he is perfecting our faith. As we fix our eyes on him, he moves in us to mature us and bring our faith to deeper places again and again and again because he's trustworthy. So no matter what we're facing in 2024, Jesus is our anchor. He is the one who anchors our soul. He did die. He did raise. He is ascended. He is waiting to return to make all things new. Therefore, we have hope. All that's good and well, right? We believe it. In the already, we believe it. That's why we're here this morning. That's why, again, last week I said this in the announcements, and this week I'm saying it in my message. It's so encouraging to see all of you here today. I was like, if there are 25 people here, I'm going to make them come sit up front. But the room is full. Because you believe. You believe we need Jesus, so you came today. So thank you. And also, our faith is not yet perfected. So we struggle. We struggle with doubt and fear and anxiousness. So right now in your notes, I just want you to jot down, what do you find your mind spinning about when you're alone? In the dark night of the soul, just quickly, not sentences, jot down 2 or 3 things that you find your mind spinning about when you're alone. That's uncomfy, right? Anybody's palms get sweaty? Shoulders tense up? Relax. You're with your brothers and sisters in Christ. Open up your hands. You're not alone. Just look around the room. You are not alone. Let's read Psalm 131 together. I am going to read it twice. I'm going to read it once in the CSB. That's the version that we use at Second Mile. And then I'm going to read it once in the ESV because that is the one that I have memorized and it is the prayer of my soul. So I had to do both today. So that's what we're going to do. Psalm 131. Lord, my heart is not proud. My eyes are not haughty. I do not get involved with things too great or too wondrous for me. Instead, I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother, my soul is like a weaned child. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forever. Now in the ESV. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great or too marvelous for me, but I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. It's the word of the Lord. Charles Spurgeon said of this psalm that it is one of the shortest psalms to read, but one of the longest to learn. 3 verses, one of the shortest to read and one of the longest to learn. It is one we will be working on for our entire lives. It's really, really rich. This morning, I'm going to have some questions on the screen in italics. These are not application questions. These are questions for you to think about in the context of this passage. They're interpretive questions, observational questions. I want you to be thinking about this psalm in the context of King David, not just in the context of your own life. Because sometimes we read psalms like this and we're like, but how could this ever apply? But if we look at how it applied to those who wrote it, it gives us hope that, okay, they were dealing with hard things and this is what they wrote, so it can be true for us too. So as we head into verse 1, the first question, interpretive question I want you to be thinking about is in the knowledge of King David, who wrote this psalm that you already have, what do you think he may have thought about when he was alone? He was the king. He's writing the song. When he is in the dark night of his soul at night, what was he thinking about as he wrote this song? Was he thinking about the burdens of being a king? All the wars that were happening all around? He was probably thinking about his wacky, jacked up family. Really hard stuff. Was he thinking about pleasing God? How do I please you, O God? The next question, how would you put lifted up and raised too high in other words? In verse 1, it says that his head is not lifted up and his eyes are not raised too high. How would you put that into other words? And then the next question that I want you to think about is think about someone on their tiptoes looking over a fence. They're just on, looking over. I can date myself and talk about Tim the Toolman Taylor and his neighbors. Oh, some of you laughed. That's good. That's good. What do you have to do with your eyes when you're looking over something that's too high for you to see? Or you're reaching up high and you're looking? What do you have to do with your eyes? You're looking up, tippy-toeing over something. When Chad and I lived in China, we would play games with our downstairs neighbors all the time who are Australian. They were there working in the orphanage and serving the city, and we became really good friends with them. We played cards with them all the time. One night when we were playing, one of the Australian friends said to the other one, "Don't be such a sticky beak." And we're like, what? What is a sticky beak? Not having any idea what it meant, of course we asked for an explanation. Don't be a sticky beak. We actually say that to our kids quite a lot. Don't be a sticky beak. The ESV in this says, my heart is not proud, my eyes are not raised too high. In other words, we're not looking where we shouldn't be looking. We're not sticking our nose where it doesn't belong, or what my Australian friends would be calling a sticky beak. We do that often in our lives. I want to know this answer. I want to know that. Why is this? What is happening here? Essentially, to bring lightheartedness to this really heavy, weighty psalm, we're being sticky beaks. So don't be a sticky beak. When we look at the action verb in verse 1, it's occupy. Occupy. Occupy in the ESV. Get involved with in the CSB. It gets worse as I go on, by the way. Concern myself with in the NLT. And this one is the one that, right, dagger to my gut. Meddled or fantasized about in the Message. So it's like this sticky beak sort of desire to look over the fence and to occupy myself with what's happening to the neighbors, to get involved with things that aren't mine to get involved with, to concern myself with answers that I'm never going to find, and to meddle or fantasize about how I wish things were different. It's a very heavy way to think about how we look at the world. Occupying ourselves to dwell on, to think about. Some might say it's to obsess. Anybody in here obsess about things? I don't, ever. Obsess, or even anxiousness. It's this fear that overtakes us. We occupy, it just consumes us. We occupy ourselves with these things that we are lifting our heads up and looking over like sticky beaks, trying to figure out what's happening with the world around us, even what's going on inside of us. God, give me the answers I want now. That is what the psalm is talking about. David is using this word, King David, obviously, negatively. It's a way that leads to worry. Anybody here worry about things? Yeah, that, again, it's part of the human experience. We already trust Jesus, as I said. We're here this morning. We're saying, Jesus, I trust you. I need to be with my brothers and sisters in Christ. And also, these things are with me. They're looking over my shoulder. Therefore, they're causing me to look at things that are distressing. It is really taking hold of us. And so if we do not occupy ourselves with these things, then we find freedom, right? Easy peasy. Easy peasy. This is easy to grasp with our minds and really hard to grasp with our emotions. It's just hard. Because we like control. I think, sometimes you'll hear people say they're control freaks, whatever. I think we all like control. People who are like even laid back, hakuna matata, no big deal, they like control too, because they want their easygoing life to be under control, right? And when we take things into our own hands, that's control. Like, well, I can't depend on others or God, so I'm just going to take this into my own hands. Or you're grabbing for what you can. That's mine, that's mine, that's mine. This relationship's mine. I'm going to take this. I'm going to hoard this in my own soul. It is also even casting it away. I don't want that. It's being our own master in God. That is what occupying ourselves with things too great or too marvelous for us is all about. It's this uncomfortable stress that we can feel in our minds and our hearts and our body. So I want you to think about those few things that you jotted down, or if you didn't want to jot them down, the things that popped into your head. Does occupying yourself with thoughts of those relationships and circumstances change anything? So look at the things that you jotted down or you thought about. If you are occupied with them, is it changing anything? The answer is no. Of course, if you lost your job, you're in the process of finding a job. And that takes work. We have to put in work to do things. But that's different than stressing being up late at night, constantly searching through all of the help and wanted ads, everything you can find online until you are just a mess. It's different. It's a different type of occupation. The phrase too great and too marvelous for us is these are the things of God, the ways of God. In fact, this particular word marvelous is specifically used 30 times in the Psalms to talk about the wondrous ways of God. So the particular parts of this psalm, occupying ourselves with things too great and too marvelous for us, is talking about occupying ourselves with things that only God can answer. It is the why God questions. Why me? Why now? Why this? That we've all asked. If we are honest with ourselves, we have all at some time or another say, but why, God? Why? David here is saying that it is a struggle that he has had. So he's writing a song about it in order to surrender this to God. As an example of the wondrous deeds of the Lord in this psalm, Psalm 9 verse 1 says, I will thank the Lord with all my heart. I will declare all your wondrous works. Psalm 40 verse 5, Lord my God, you have done many things. Your wondrous works and your plans for us, none can compare with you. If I were to report and speak of them, they are more than can be told. You may say, oh yeah, but Angel, those are the good things that God does. The wondrous things. Like we hear that verse and we're like, the wondrous things are amazing and so good. And that's what the Psalms are talking about. But Isaiah 28 talks about the strange work of God. The strange work of God. There are things in this world that we cannot understand. There are people in this room dealing with things that are so burdensome that they feel that they might crush under the weight of them. Those are the things that are the too marvelous and too wonderful for us to understand in our own spirit. We must trust God in those things. What I want to tell you is occupying yourself with circumstances, relationships, news in the world, wars, anything outside of our control indicates an inner arrogance that we have the power and ability to change things that are actually too great or too marvelous for our human selves. I'm going to say that again. It just took a pretty pointed turn, right? Because now I'm talking about pride. Occupying ourselves with circumstances, relationship, news, anything outside of our control indicates an inner arrogance that we have the power and ability to change things that are actually too great or too marvelous for our human selves. I hate to break it to all of you worriers, myself included. Worry indicates arrogance. If I worry enough about this, then I can change it. If I worry and obsess about this enough, then I'm going to be able to fix these circumstances. It is relinquishing peace and taking hold of anxiousness. That doesn't feel good. Already my shoulders start to go up. I have to loosen them up, shake out my hands and say, okay, I'm not going to occupy myself with that which is out of my control. I will not occupy myself with that which is out of control. And a lot of times it's minute by minute, right? I am thinking about my friend who is struggling over and over and over. If only I could do this. If only I could help in this way. If only I pray the right prayers. Instead of saying, okay, God, here you go. This is what's happening. In fact, I was having a meeting with a counselor a few years ago. A really wise guy. He always smacks me in the face and I pay him for it. And I was talking about these difficult circumstances that were just overwhelming. And we were having a big thing that was about to happen. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, Angel, today you need to take a nap. You need to go on a walk. But you do not need to pray about this anymore because your prayers are not prayers. It's just words of anxiousness disguised as prayers. whoa, right in the gut. Like, God help, God help, God help. He's like, I'm here, I'm helping. It was an obsession disguised as prayer. Now, lest any of you think, wait, that doesn't sound right. You know the difference between when you're on your knees in humility saying, God, I need you so desperately. And then arms up in the air saying, God, here, help me, help me, help me. There is a difference. The prayer that leads to peace and the obsessive words described as prayer that leads to occupying myself with things too great or too marvelous for me to understand. So the first application questions for you today, which we've already sort of talked about in the beginning. What occupies you? What occupies your mind, your heart, even your body, the tension? Where are you lifting your eyes? What are you standing on your tippy toes to see? Where is your sticky beak? What is your why question to God? Why? What is it? Too marvelous and too great for you. As we go into verse 2, I want to turn a corner here, as David often does in his Psalms. In the CSB, the word is instead. In the ESV, the word is but. My head is not lifted too high. My eyes are not raised up. I do not occupy myself with things too great or too marvelous for me. What do I do instead? But instead of this, I will do this. So again, another one of those interpretive questions for you. What is the contrast from a proud heart and raised eyes? What are the two words that David uses to describe his heart? It's so peaceful. Calm and quiet. Calm and quiet. Oh, that we would have calm, quiet souls. This, if occupying ourselves is arrogant, calm and quieting ourselves before the Lord is the comfort of humility. If we occupy ourselves here, I can control things. I'm the master of my own way. I'm occupying myself. And here, the comfort of humility is the ability to calm and quiet ourselves before the Lord. I don't need to know the deep answers of why, because I trust the Lord. Now, I know that some of you are already like, but we can take whatever question we want to God. That's true. You can. You can. And for those of you that are parents in the room, the amount of times that a parent is asked why is infinity. And sometimes the answer is just because. And don't you think God has the ability to say that to us too? The God of the universe, who does wonderful, marvelous works, who has strange work, as it talks about in Isaiah. We have to say, okay, you are God and we are not. What does David compare the child to? He says, I have calmed and quieted my soul. What does he compare it to? A weaned child. When you think about a weaned child, this is getting a little more personal, as David does, because this is so important. It's the shortest to read, the longest to learn. A weaned child, able to quiet your own soul in the presence of God. It's fostering a quiet faith. I thought about this psalm, for many years, and then specifically this week. I was just so struck with so many times in prayer, we're like, God, quiet my soul. God, help me. God, fix it. God, make it go away. God, give me peace. God, help me. And here, David is saying that he himself has fostered the ability to be quiet in the loving arms of a father. That is a huge shift. That is a very different perspective. It is fostering a quiet faith. It is breathing and taking in maturity. If you think about an inconsolable child, and this is a weaned child. This is not an infant that is dependent on his mother for everything. This is a weaned child. Think about an inconsolable child that you've seen. In the corner, raging, maybe in pain, anger, frustration, completely inconsolable. And the caregiver is saying, come here, come to me, sit in my lap. I will hold you. I will give you what you need. I will take you. I will do this. What does the child have to do? The child has to get up or calm down in the loving arms of the caregiver. If I scoop up an inconsolable child, they may writhe and kick me or hit me in the face a couple times with their flailing arms. Hopefully, eventually, in the peace of my arms, they will settle in and soothe their soul and quiet themselves in the lap of the caregiver, in my lap. That's what David is saying we do here. Using a maternal image of the Lord, which is so beautiful, King David describes a child that isn't in need of what the mother can give, which is nourishment, because he's weaned, but is leaning in for love, comfort, and delight, relational closeness. That's what a weaned child is doing here. It's not, give me what I want. It's like, this is what I need. I need to be close to you, God. I need to sit in your lap and receive your care. I need to know that you are real. I want your peace. I just want to be with you. This is the difference between an infantile faith and a maturing faith. If we are still infants in our faith, this is hard, you guys. You know I love you. But if we are still infants in our faith, we are beating the air all the time, blaming God for all our problems, and not allowing ourselves to move into his arms to receive his comfort in spite of our pain and our grief and our loss. Maturing faith is able to say, no, I don't need the breast anymore because I am weaned, and I am able to sit in your lap and receive your care and trust you because I am not lifting my eyes too high. I'm not raising it and sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. I'm not occupying myself with the problems of my life or this world, but I have calmed and quieted my soul within me to be with you, Jesus, because you love me. That's the essence of what David is saying here. Eugene Peterson puts it this way. I love Pastor Eugene. Heavenly comfort breaks through our despair and persuades us that all will be well and all manner of things will be well. He's quoting Julian of Norwich. Heavenly comfort, the loving arms of our Father, breaks through our despair and persuades us that all will be well and all manner of things will be well. It is the essence of it is well with my soul. My circumstances are not well. My relationships are not well. There is conflict all around me. We are heading into really hard things in 2024. But because I know I have a maturing faith and can quiet my soul like a weaned child with its mother and sit in the loving arms of the Father and say to him and believe that he is saying to me, all will be well and all manner of things will be well. In verse 3, there's a surprise ending here because David doesn't rebuke himself or give him a list of what to change in the first couple of verses, and then makes a shift. So he's not saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Be this way, be more mature. What is he basically saying? What does he tell Israel to do? It's so simple. What does he tell Israel to do? To put their hope in Yahweh. And he speaks to Israel, not just to himself. He doesn't say, oh, David, put your hope in the Lord. He says, oh, Israel, put your hope in the Lord. Because he knows the universal need for hope. We all need it. Every single person in here needs the hope of the Lord. We need to put our hope in the Lord. So if you contrast occupy and hope, there is a canyon between the two, especially in how it feels. Like not just with your mind, with your emotions. Occupy and hope, a canyon of difference. So how would you describe hope? Another question for you to be pondering. How would you describe hope? Not worrying. Pretty easy. Trusting God, even when we don't know the outcome, no matter the circumstances. Easy peasy again, right? Hope. active expectation. Hopefully you've heard the Advent messages, and in our Advent series, Chad said this: hope persists in spite of very real facts because it is anchored in something, someone greater than our circumstances. Chad taught about the tension we feel in hope, that we are experiencing our circumstances, and yet we have Jesus who is seated at the right hand of the Father, waiting to return to make all things new. We're still here, and Jesus said if he goes away, he will come back. He will go away and prepare a place for us and come back and take us to be with him. That is tension. Again, there are people here who are experiencing heaviness, heavy circumstances, the tension of we're here on earth and it's so hard. But Jesus, I will not blame you because I hope in you. I trust you. We can feel that. The tension is not, this is really hard and I'm mad at you, God, but I'm going to have hope anyway. That's not the tension. That's not what David is talking about in this psalm. He's telling Israel, put your hope in the Lord. Despite all of the things they were dealing with, which was a lot, Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. We are not in a harder time than there ever has been in history. We are in a hard time in history just as they were. Oh, Israel, put your hope in the Lord despite the tension. Hope. So as you're facing your circumstances, the tension that pulls you is say, but Jesus, you are worthy. Worthy is the Lamb. I look to you. I fix my eyes on you. If you do that for a long enough time, your shoulders are going to hurt, right? It's hard. It's tension. Good, holy tension that we're not denying our circumstances. We're not being ridiculously optimistic or nostalgic or just denying real things. We're saying life is hard, but Jesus is good and faithful, and I will trust him. Psalm 131 is actually a sister psalm to 130. So 130, 131, they go together. In Psalm 130, verse 7, David said, Israel, put your hope in the Lord. And then he explains it a little more. For there is faithful love with the Lord, and with him is redemption and abundance. With the Lord there is faithful love, and with him is redemption and abundance. So as Jesus people, where do we put our hope? Such an easy answer, right? It's the Jesus answer that we all want to say in Sunday school, but it's real. Jesus. Jesus is where we put our hope. And what's beautiful about this last verse, verse 3, that this is a corporate call for hope. A corporate call for all of us. Oh, Israel, put your hope in God. We help one another. We help one another. So when you guys show up on New Year's Eve, it bolsters my hope. I'm just spinning my wheels, doing nothing, and what is my life? What is my even purpose? What's going on? The things that I'm occupying myself for. I show up on Sunday and I see your faces and I'm like, oh, right. We're in this together. We need one another. I need your help. Hopefully, you need my help. That we say, look to Jesus. If I'm sitting in the dirt, I want someone to come and sit down with me in the dirt and say, I see you. What you're dealing with is hard. You're not alone. Can we pray together? Can I pray for you? Can we get up and go sit on the bench instead of in the dirt? Can we look to Jesus? Oh, Israel, put your hope in the Lord. Together, we need one another. This year will likely be hard. I have read quite a few respected pastors' posts this last week, wondering what they were teaching about on New Year's Eve. And so many of them said, remind your church that 2024 is going to be hard. It is, you guys. And I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I am saying we need one another. That 2020 was hard. And I don't know if you guys know this, but our country does not do elections well. And there is a propensity for division in this room because of it. We cannot We cannot let that happen. Jesus is our anchor. We are on the narrow path together. We may think differently politically, but it's okay because Jesus is our main hope. So it's going to be hard, but we do not let politics divide us this year. There will be things that you face that you are going to need to share with trusted people so they can hold you up. It is going to be real. I have asked the Camerons permission to share with you what they're going through, and we're going to pray for them in a minute, and the Janistas as well. They're not here this morning that I see. Many of you know the Cameron clan, Rana and Stuart, and Alec and Sarah, and all their wonderful children. And they are facing extreme difficulties this year. Rana has terminal cancer, and I cannot express to you Rana and Stuart's faith. It is beautiful. It is, man, it's the anchoring of like, well, if Rana's not questioning, then I'm certainly not going to. I'm going to just be walking right alongside. And so it's going to be a hard year for our church family. And we're going to come around them, and we're going to lift them up, and we're not going to bug them. We're going to just pray and hold them. And Alec and Sarah, too, we're going to bring them food, and we're going to pray for them. We're going to worship on their behalf. If they can't lift their hands, we're going to lift our hands, and we're going to be with them. It's probably going to be hard, you guys. But our hope is in God. Oh, second mile, put your hope in God. We can have an unhealthy occupation all year with why. We can get angry in our guts and in our souls, or we can say, God, we trust you. This is so hard. I don't know why these things are happening, but oh, second mile, we will put our hope in God. So the last questions I have for you today. When, where, and how? Easy question. When, where, and how will you combat your occupied sticky beak with putting your hope in God? I put sticky beak in there for some lightheartedness because we do. We have sticky beaks. I would encourage you to use that in your family from now on. Don't be a sticky beak. So how are you going to combat that? Obviously, David had to write this psalm that he's going to calm and quiet his soul. He's going to have maturing faith. He's going to sit in the lap of the loving arms of the Father like a weaned child with its mother. He's going to find comfort from God. Remember that Spurgeon said that this is the shortest to read and the longest to learn. It's real. I memorized this years ago. When my mind is spinning and I can't make it stop, I just pray these things. So I want to say to you, occupy yourself with hope in God. We're going to pray for a few minutes for the Camerons and the Janistas. Now, I don't know what words to pray. When I pray for the Camerons, I pray that their faith would be resolute, that Ron and Stuart's grandkids will follow Jesus their whole entire life, that this would be monumental for their faith in a way that honors God, that Alec and Sarah will be encouraged and loved, and that Rana and Stuart, they will keep their eyes fixed on Jesus. So we're going to pray just for a few minutes, and then Angela's going to lead us in some songs. God, would you help us pray for the Camerons? Would you help us keep our eyes fixed on you? Would you help us to trust you? Help us